Here's the left front fender, and all along I knew that this is what the bottom of it looked like. It had the original, it looks like the original steel was in here, and then someone had patched it by welding another piece on the outside of it. So that's the way it was previously repaired. I was able to buy this replacement piece from Moss, made in Taiwan, beautifully made. I am really thrilled with it. Such a great fit. Not too hard to fit, just had to be careful. Had to cut along here once, a rough cut, and then I fine-tuned it, having to go in another ½ inch. I had to take it off here, fit it to the car, and I found that it was where I had first cut it, it still needed to go up another ½ inch. So I cut another ½ inch, grind it straight as I can. Over on this side, you have to cut under here so that the replacement piece will fit under, between this support piece, goes right under. And it's got a flange here, and I'll show you the other side of that. Here's the other side. The flange allows this piece to be flush with this piece. I've just got to trim this edge over in this area just a little more to get it a little flush. A couple of screws to hold it. It's in there just by, right now being held in there, but just by one screw and by the force fit over here and over here. Here you can see it here. Here is the bottom of the left fender where I completed welding that bottom piece in. It's welded behind in the flange area, coming out this way from the other side with spot welds and then tack welds along the edge. And over here I also filled in with a little weld along the seam over here, and I may do a little bit more on that. I found that once it's all tacked in place, I am able to actually do little seams, not just tacks, as long as I don't have the heat up too high, and I can do that without blowing holes through. This pushed in, don't really have it bolted up, but I have adjusted the holes so they line up with the holes in the sill that have cage nuts, so for bolting the bottom. So that repair is pretty much done, and we just have to fix the front where the rotted section is. Here's a front repair piece that I got on eBay. A new old stock, made in England, front repair piece for the left front fender on my MGA, which I found to be quite rotted. Now this one actually came to me with a single hole over here because apparently it was for a 1500. So I welded that hole shut, made a plug for it, welded it shut, and bought this piece here that comes from Todd Clock. It's a reinforcing piece that's on the back of those holes in the 1600s, and it contains, it's also a tapping plate. It's got the holes with taps in here for the screws that hold the light in place, and that will actually go on inside in the back here on the back side and weld in. So that's about what I'm going to weld this in. I also have to cut the 4 holes up here for mounting the big headlamp. And after that's ready, then I will be going about the challenging task of fitting this, cutting off the old rotted front of the left fender, and butt welding this in to the fender. Here's the left front fender, and I have cut out the old rotten front part. As you can see, it's in pretty rough shape. I was able to find a new NOS MG front fender section on eBay, and that's this one here. Now this one was a 1500, so I had to convert it to a 1600. It came with one hole here. I had to plug that hole and then make 2 new holes. And on the back of it, the 1600 has a reinforcing and tapping plate back here, which I spot welded in, and it's also a guide for where the holes go. This piece, I have been working on fitting it for a butt weld on the fender here. like that. And I left the original length of the fender over here on temporarily so that I can have a guide as to how far to cut back. I did this in several cuts, homing in on it, and I'm getting close to it now. But I'm going to get it all clamped with butt welds, bring it up to the car, see how good a fit it is before I weld it. Here's the front fender repair section, clamped in place on the left fender with copper backup and weld clamps. Quite difficult to get decent gaps here. They're a little bit larger than the 40 thousandths. That's ideal, but it's a very round piece. Here's the back of the weld clamps in here. There's the copper backing. Clamps as far every place I could get where I don't have to, leaving me enough room to get in and do some tack welds from the outside in. We'll see how it goes. Okay, so here is that front fender repair piece with the first pass of welding, and I have removed the butt clamps, and what's holding it, the front section here onto the fender, is the tacks I made all between the butt clamps. You can see in here the gap that's remaining where the clamps were, and I'm going to weld those in. I'm going to back them up with copper by clamping each one individually as I go, and I'm going to finish welding that. Here is that left fender with the new front section welded onto it, and that's how it's fitting. Of course, piping like over here, that's just old piping for fit. Piping fills in this gap over here. Here's a good look at the transition between the old and new. A little bit of filler here. I don't think I need to sand it down much more over here. The weld pretty much disappeared from old to new. Strong. I'm happy with that. Lines up nicely. As you can see, looking across the front of the car. If I put a level on them vertically, they're both exactly the same level. Vertical level. Quite happy with that. There's the wheel opening, as you can see, from old to new. Got a few more things to do here, and that fender will be maybe not good as new, but very good. Here's a quick look at the left front fender where I have filled in the weld of the repaired replacement front section going over to the rest of the fender. And over on this side and at the far end, you can see where I have filled in a couple of times. I'm not quite finished smoothing it out, the weld on the outside, and a couple of other places where I've filled a few holes in. This is the inside of that left front fender. I have filled in the welds. Here, up there's the weld line in the front. You can hardly notice it. And over here at the rear, you can see that I have filled in the weld line on the back. Don't want it to corrode, want it to look like practically new. And I have primed it all with Rust-Oleum paint over rust primer. It's all been very, very well cleaned with wire brush and sanding disc, and then treated with an acid rust remover before the primer went on. So that's all been done, and today I'm gonna, since I got the garage up to temperature today, I'm gonna paint the inside of the two front fenders red on top of the primer. Front fenders with a coat of Rust-Oleum red, looking pretty good. Down at the line where the weld is, you can see it looks a little rough because in addition to putting filler over that weld, I put seam sealer paint on top of it, which gives it a little bit rough appearance here and up in the front. over there. Gives it a little rougher appearance than the nice smooth stuff with the cleaned up metal. But it preserves any place where there might have been any tendency to corrode.